All right, you guys. So I want to start with a story of me as a young designer. When I was early in my career, I had a lot of really great design ideas and solutions, but they almost never made it into the roadmap. And the problem I realized was not that I wasn't convincing or that my ideas weren't good or that I didn't have the data. The problem was that I was fundamentally misaligned with the rest of my team on what problems we were trying to solve. And I realized that my pretty gorgeous design presentations were not going to get anything on the roadmap. So I started to facilitate meetings or facilitate workshops instead of presenting my ideas. So some of the things I started doing was maybe have a co-synthesis session instead of simply presenting my research findings. Maybe have a silent critique where people write their feedback instead of design presentations. Have an ideation session, invite people to co-create instead of sitting quietly in my corner inspiration hopping on the internet. Or have a road mapping workshop and invite the PMs, engineers, marketing, and sales leaders to come in and co create the roadmap instead of simply waiting for the product manager to tell me what to do. A lot of this just came out of my frustration with not having my ideas heard. But what started happening once I started facilitating meetings instead of giving presentations is that other people started coming to me and wanting me to facilitate their meetings. So a lot of people at my company back then, like many of you, went to and led a lot of meetings that looked like this, where somebody had a presentation, and then you have like a 50-minute presentation, and you spend 5 minutes on questions, and it's the same three people that always ask questions in the meetings. But the teams didn't feel aligned. Or another very common type of meeting that people were at, where they were brainstorming, was that they would present a problem in a meeting. Here is the problem. And then there would be silence for a bit. And then the VP or the hippo, the highest paid person in the room, if you attended Katya's talk, there's going to be a lot of references to her talk today. It might have, just an idea. I have an idea. Why don't we do this? And then everybody else nods just because it's kind of hard to offer up a second idea when the first idea has been verbally offered already. So all of these folks in the company, when they came to my meetings, they were like, well, can I have a meeting like this? Can you help me run my meeting? And slowly, sort of, I became, instead of a designer or a design leader, honestly, a meeting facilitator at my company. And I kind of found myself in this very calm, calm place once I realized that that was my role at the company, was to be a facilitator. It didn't mean that I was making any of the decisions, like I wasn't making the roadmap decisions. I wasn't making strategic decisions, but now I could facilitate the leadership offsite to ensure that the dialogue was human centered and customer centered, and that we started with the problems and then went to solutions. And that ability to control the dialogue in some ways uh, just gave me the sense of purpose and fulfillment at work. It was also sort of really my path to leadership. Once I started facilitating, I definitely started on my leadership path. So what do I mean when I say facilitator? It is kind of a big word, and the dictionary is pretty vague about it. Someone who helps to bring about an outcome by providing unobtrusive assistance, guidance, or supervision. There's a lot of, ands and ors in there. When I think of a meeting facilitator in a business context, especially in a design context, I just think it's someone that plans, and leads the meeting. They're not the decision maker, they're not the hippo, they are not a participant, ideally, as Katya said, but um, are they lead the meeting to get to this outcome. They're responsible for making sure the meeting doesn't go around in circles. So I want to take a moment for you guys to do like a one quick activity. I want you to think about your meetings. And what are your meetings that follow these sort of, it's a presentation and everyone's bored, or, there's one person has an idea and then the meeting's over. Ineffective meetings. So I want you to, I think Preet is going to give you a link to my Miro board. I'm giving you guys a free link to like this Miro board. So Preet's going to drop that link and I'll drop it too. Just give me a second here. And if you guys can just drop in, let me see here. And what I'd love for each of you, anyone that's online today, just grab one of these sections. Grab one of these little rectangles that you see, which all say copy of redesign meeting, and just zoom in, type your name. The first thing you should do is type your name. So go ahead and type your name here so that nobody else uses that card. So go ahead and type your name. Let me see. I see a lot of cursors flying around. Stay in this workshop area, this pink header that says workshop area, and go ahead and claim one of these. Okay, perfect. And the next thing you can do once you've claimed your name is, well, I'll put a timer on for 5 minutes. Just go back to your calendars and look for 3 meetings over the last couple of weeks. Just pick 3 meetings that were ineffective. Now, these don't have to be meetings that you led or you own. Any meeting that's ineffective will work. So just go ahead. Maybe it's like your stand-up that was ineffective or some other meeting. So go ahead and just write 3 meetings that were ineffective. If you have questions, type it in the chat. I don't think we need 5 minutes to do this. I'm going to give us 3 minutes. I'm going to play some music. I'm just using the Miro timer here. So I'm going to give us 3 minutes, play some music, pick 3 meetings, reflect on your calendar. Let's see if this works. If you guys have questions, just kind of post it on the chat. So Preet is asking, how should we describe the meeting? Anything that works for you is like, so the name of the meeting is fine. This is just for you. Nobody else is going to see it. I mean, nobody else is going to try and make sense of it. So however you want to describe the meeting to yourself is fine. All right. Try and focus on the activity and not on my presentation, but this is open source stuff. I mean, not necessarily open source, but it's open and public. I will share this with you guys later. And maybe when you're done, I don't know if you can find the reactions, but you can go ahead and give me a thumbs up just to say you're done. It's right next to your avatar on the top. There's a reactions button. Awesome. I see a few thumbs ups. Awesome. A couple more. Whoa. This is so fun. I heart all of you. All right, we'll let this music kind of die out. 30 more seconds for anyone that's still working. Okay. I'm going to stop the timer. All right, thank you for that. So hold tight. Hold tight. I love the hearts. Okay, so it's a good step to just think about the ineffective meetings. There are meetings where for some reason you think it's ineffective, you don't know why yet, and we'll figure out why. So the way I think about meetings, and when I'm trying to design meetings, I'm going to turn off cursors here for a second, is like now you have 3 ineffective meetings. Let's try it. We're going to redesign one of them in today's talk. But the way to redesign it or redesign a meeting is to really first start with the goal or the objective of the meeting and critically think about whether or not it should be a meeting. Meetings are so expensive. Honestly, if I can kill a meeting and still retain whatever the essence of that communication was, that's my preference. So if your meeting is a one-way communication, then take it to email. And I know this gets said quite often, oh, that meeting could have been an email. But I don't think, because email is so like easy to send and meetings are so easy to organize, like we're not really thinking critically about how to use these media. So any content that's not going to change as a result of feedback should be an email. Any content that is not going to change as a result of feedback should be an email. It can be an update, it can be kind of some knowledge, some data analysis, research synthesis, whatever it is. If it's not going to change based on feedback, it should be an email. Now, if you do want feedback, but it's going to be like a pretty simple one-step feedback, I'm going to send out my designs and just see if anyone like screams fire, can we move that to async? Let's not have a meeting. A lot of recurring meetings kind of end up on our calendars because they're just there, even if we don't have topics or if we could do them asynchronously. So on our team, we use Slack and Loom quite a bit for async work. And of course, we send out Miro boards and you can like kind of comment on a Miro board just like you can in sort of Figma or something like that. So do as much async as possible. And then only if it's a complex topic requiring back and forth, that's when, I decide that this really does need a meeting. We all need to be synchronously gathered. More than 3 people need to be gathered at the same time. And a meeting should have a very clear beginning, a middle, and an end, a clear objective. So once I've decided something needs to be a meeting, I'm going to go back into presentation mode for a second here. Then this is the meeting manifesto for me and my team, our teams here at Miro. For our meetings, we want to be doing the work in the meeting. So we rely on meetings being visual, not verbal. It's very clear that very diverse teams and the design thinking methods and our prototyping methods in design have proven that over and over again, that even diverse groups can align when the artifacts that they're talking about are tangible, not when they're just text, words, or verbal, but when they're tangible drawings of the end state or of whatever you're talking about. So we always want to make our meetings visual. We do the work in the meeting. We don't focus on presentations. If I'm building a presentation for any meeting, I'm usually thinking, what am I doing wrong? Like, why can I just send this out via email? So we come together in meetings to do the work. To build, collaborate means building or producing something together. Most of our meetings have some element of silence. So silent working time. Again, Katya had this in her sort of diagram. If you attended the first talk of today, if you didn't watch the video, she was great. Um, but there needs to be some silent time working together, and there is value in working together but alone, working together in silence. And I'll show you some examples of how we do this. And then instead of only focusing on discussions or dialogue, we spend a lot of time and energy focused on making decisions. Katya talked about this at length too. Most teams, in my experience, are much more comfortable sort of diverging than converging. Converging is hard. You have to tell people like, no, that idea is not going to work, right? And the key to decisions is having a decider, identified decision maker. If decider is hard for your organization, sometimes I use tiebreaker. Like this person is a tiebreaker. Like they get to decide. Um, so having a decider, but then also uh, finding ways to disassociate ideas from people. An idea is an idea. It is doesn't belong to a specific person. So when you reject an idea, you're not rejecting the person. Kind of creating that disassociation is key. And this meeting manifesto is something that we take to all our meetings. We want to make sure we are following it. And then you assemble the right group of people. So I find that Amazon's 2 pizza rule, 6 to 8 people is good. Diverse. The more diverse your audience is, the bigger is the solution spaces that you can play in. And then having a clear decision maker or tiebreaker. And then the next thing as a meeting leader or facilitator is for me to like create the sequence. How is this meeting going to go? What is the beginning? What is the middle? And what is the end? And most meetings have sort of this diverge, converge sort of thing going on. You're creating choices and then you're choosing between the choices, making decisions. So start with some context, have some divergence, usually in silence, converge with the help of frameworks and a decider, and then conclusion. This is the part that everyone skips. Katya talked about it as well. I'll share some of my frameworks for concluding. So the rest of the talk, I want to prime you guys with some examples of good meetings that have really worked for me, and then send you off to redesign your own meetings. So I'm going to jump out of presentation at some point to show you guys some of my frameworks. But here is a very common meeting recipe that I use. If it's an alignment meeting or a feedback meeting, let's say we have a strategy and we need alignment around it. I might do a 10-minute presentation. Ideally, it would be a pre-read, but that people don't always read. We do a 10-minute presentation, and then I have usually a very clear space for people to write feedback. And once people write feedback, then we can spend the rest of the time in a guided discussion. And in the guided discussion, it's always the meeting leader, the facilitator, the person asking for feedback that is sort of choosing what they want to talk about in the meeting. Not all pieces of feedback need a discussion. So if something's clear, no need to discuss. Something is not critical, no need to discuss it. And I want to share with you guys a frame that I use quite often for my sort of feedback meetings or alignment meetings. I feel like alignment meetings, honestly, are also feedback meetings. If people are misaligned with whatever you're proposing, it's because they have feedback or they have other ideas. So this is something that I use after a presentation. I have some space to ask people, what do you think is working about what we're presenting? What do you think is working? And you don't want to lose the things that are working. But then for the things that are not working, I want my audience to self-select and tell me if their feedback is critical. Drop everything and solve this. Like, do you want me and my team to drop everything and solve this? Is it a strong suggestion? Like, yeah, like this is worth spending some time considering this. Or is this just sort of an idea or an opinion you're brainstorming with us? And this really helps with the VP who might have an idea, but because they're the VP, the team might see it as a critical feedback versus perhaps the more junior engineer in the room has some really critical feedback. So I really love having people self-select. I know Sam had a really great talk about critique to workshop culture, and this is kind of my way of ensuring that feedback gets taken at the right granularity. Another pretty common design type meeting is sort of a problem framing and ideation meeting. So you have a problem and you want to brainstorm solutions. Of course, as designers, we always talk about let's spend some time in the problem space. Not all teams do that. So this is a common agenda I might have where if there is a team that wants to do a brainstorm, uh, I am going to spend some time framing the problem and then working on the solution. But the recipe is similar. You start with context and then spend some time quietly writing. Um, then spend some time resolving and discussing. And then you converge and make a final decision. So this kind of silent ideation, resolving, affinity, voting and deciding is like a very, very kind of like a common recipe. I want to talk a little bit about solo ideation here. There is, so humans talk at about 125 words a minute, but we can process information, read, write, and assimilate information at 300 to 400 words a minute. So when we're in a meeting and we're bored and it's all verbal, that's like the part of our mind that could be processing much more information together. Also, it's really kind of intimidating to press unmute in a large meeting or even in a small meeting. And writing is is the perfect way to get the first order thoughts from everyone in the room at an equal level, an equal playing field. You know, and again, because we do this on Miro, of course, like your handwriting doesn't make you stand out. You know, normally like the person with the best handwriting on the sticky note, like their ideas get voted on, but really something like this levels the playing field. So I want to share, I can share sort of this particular meeting was with a bike company that found that their bikes were reported damaged by customers when they shipped them to the US from Europe. And so first we did a little kind of problem framing exercise. And this is where people were quietly adding to this mind map and just saying, like, here's another reason why I think bikes are being reported damaged. And, you know, we came up with a bunch of reasons like, was it damaged in the warehouse during shipping? Is it a manufacturing defect? Are our customers just making it up? So they came up with a really wide variety of problems, potential reasons or root causes. And that was the diversity of the team that they'd selected. And then once you do that, you can use kind of in a mind map setting, I would use some kind of voting before kind of deciding, well, this is, say, this is the problem. Couriers are not treating it as a delicate item. And now that you have like this, you might say, our packaging is fine. They're not damaged in our warehouse. Like this is where we think the bulk of the problem is. And once you know that, then we move into solutioning, similar, quiet brainstorming, affinity, map of ideas, and very similar. I love using 2x2s. Somebody was asking in one of the previous talks what frameworks you use. I think dot voting is useful to go from 100 ideas to 10 ideas, but to go from 10 to 1, it's nice to have some kind of a more objective prioritization facets or framework. And in this case, let's say the team decided, well, making it extra heavy will have high impact, but comes at a high cost. Can we try, like maybe couriers don't think bikes are delicate, but they think TVs are delicate. Could we put a picture of TV on the parcel? So they like kind of chose to try this because it was cheap. And they did, honestly, this team did try it and they found like a massive reduction in damaged shipping items. So just an example of a recipe that, you know, you just have to plan ahead of time and make sure you guide the team through it. Um, Similarly, you can brainstorm against kind of a journey map. Maybe you already have a journey map and you do the same thing, silent ideation, and then resolving it. Um, I believe in sketching quite a bit. So it's another kind of ideation. But I still feel in the virtual world, we need to be using pen and paper. Not everyone has, an iPad with a pencil or whatever. So sketches with a heat map. This is where I think the dot voting heat map is useful, kind of when you have a lot of options and you want to start finding the pockets of interesting ideas. That's when I like using the dots. And similarly with decision making, sometimes I was working with this executive team where we had two options for a particular project where, once COVID hit, they were trying to decide whether to pivot to a new idea or stick to the original roadmap. And instead of sort of coming into the meeting and asking, hey, what does each person think we should do, and going around, because the first person that spoke like would color the rest of the meeting. We just spent some time quietly with a bunch of executives who were like, hey, we're executives, like you have us all in a meeting, why are we quiet? Having a bunch of executives just write at the same time what they were thinking about, what were their concerns or the facets for the decision, just having everyone write at the same time and being able to read what everybody else in this room is thinking at this very given moment and synthesizing that in their heads before moving to a verbal dialogue was just really magical for this particular team. And so spending that 10 minutes in silence, just writing down your thoughts together, I highly encourage. So once you have sort of this context, creating choices, making choices, and you have a very clear state question, a very clear objective where you want to get to at the end. Once you've done this is how we conclude all of our meetings. It's always about you've made the decision, we're going to put a picture of the TV. All right, who will do what by when? And we do this in the meeting, not after the meeting. I know people are tired by the end. I know people want to be able to just move on. But having at least one person responsible for the next step is important. Generally, we try to have 3 or 4 people just kind of chime in on what they're going to do to move forward the decisions we've made in this meeting. And maybe one of those things is the hippo is going to sleep on it and decide tomorrow. Hippo is the highest paid person in the room. Don't want to, yeah. Please don't draw things on my board, but that's fine. It's Miro. It's co-creation. We can do it. So I'd love for you guys to try and practice some of this. I know we don't have a lot of time. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to put a timer for 8 minutes. 8 minutes here. And I'd invite you guys back into the Miro board. Maybe somebody can post the link for me. If you come back to the Miro board, look for your name again. If you've misplaced it, just like I think you can just search for it and like find it and it'll get you there. So just look for your name and pick one of the meetings that were ineffective. And let's spend some time. Let's spend some time together reflecting on what the objectives of that meeting are. And if you were to redesign it in a way that's participatory and goes through this context, diverge, converge, conclude framework, how you might redesign it. What would be your new agenda? So let me know if you have questions. And I'm going to just start the timer again and let people just kind of, you can like use text or whatever you want to redesign your meeting and build your new agenda here. You can even sketch whatever you want. I'm going to start the timer. So I highly encourage, I'll send out this board so you guys have it, but I highly encourage spending some time just reflecting on one of your meetings and redesigning it. All right, I see some brainstorming going on here. So yeah, as if you have questions, drop it in the chat. Otherwise, keep going. Okay. I see a few thoughts here. Maybe let's do another 30, maybe another minute of reflection on how we might redesign our meetings. And then we'll come back and do a round of reflection and close out. Okay. The music is playing in Miro. The timer plays it, but it's just always kind of weird when it ends before the time ends. So I'll end the timer. Thanks. I was like reading through some of these, and um, I think what stood out to me was how many of you started talking about like what is the goal, what is the main goal, set the goal for the meeting, which is key. A lot of times when I'm designing meetings, I like to almost visualize or sketch out the end result, like what do I want to see at the end, um, and then kind of go from there. So I have like one final activity that I love. Since you guys are all on the Miro board, I'm gonna like maybe bring everyone to me. Sorry if I like moved you as you were in the middle of something. I apologize. I hate doing this. But since you're in the board, I would ask you to write one thing, like just pick a sticky note here. And I'd love for everyone to just give us one thing that you're going to try differently in your next meeting, whether it's a meeting that you're attending or leading. So, yeah, just maybe one thing that today, either this talk or maybe Katya's talk or Sam's talk on Monday inspired you to change. So let's give ourselves a minute and then we'll close out and go to Q&A. Okay, awesome. Well, I'm gonna take some time, but keep writing if you're still writing. If you haven't had a chance to write, I'd love for people to like just kind of drop in here and just type one thing that you want to try differently. Just make an intention for trying something new. And I see that silent time is really resonating with this group, which is super important. All right. I think that's it. That's it from me. So, Preet, over to you. I'm going to try to stop sharing screen.